Hi, everybody. Bill Prince again. Welcome to our brief discussion on internet law, social media, and privacy. When we talk about the legal and ethical environment of business, of course, one of the new frontiers, and I guess it's not so new anymore, is that of the intersection of law, technology, and ethics. Technology moves at a much faster rate than the law does, as we have seen and will continue to see. And many times the issues that technology creates, both in the legal and the ethical world, are much farther ahead down the timeline than the legal issues are that are developed to deal with many of those issues. And so oftentimes the problems that we see when related to law and technology have to do with that time delay. We're still trying to apply laws that were in the 17 and 1800s dealing with contracts to internet contracts today. And obviously, while some of that applies, probably not the most ideal situation. I just want to spend a few minutes talking with you about some of the issues that the internet and social media pose to the workplace. And we're not going to spend a lot of time dealing with some of these particular laws and issues. They are relatively specialized, and we don't have the time to go into them. Only, though, I want you to be aware of these things. And what I will tell you about law and the internet is this: that in terms of the environment of the internet, it continues to more or less be the wild, wild west, in the sense that regulating it has been extremely difficult, both globally and domestically. The internet is pervasive, and it's everywhere. And sites we look at, we have absolutely no idea where they come from, where they're housed, where they're hosted, whose law applies, and things of that nature. The second thing that makes the internet problematic is that much of it is communication and speech. And we have, as a country, generally been very mindful about trying not to pass laws that limit the ability of individuals to communicate. Now, this isn't always the case globally. You can look at China and some other countries' policies regarding access to the internet, but at least from the United States point of view, laws that have tried to regulate content have been very, very skeptically looked at by policymakers. And of course, the biggest area of the internet that is of concern to a lot of people is the whole issue of online pornography. If you look at the amount of money that is being generated over the internet through the use of pornographic sites, it's really quite astounding. And there have been, efforts made by some to try to limit that. But in the absence of it being child pornography, laws that have tried to limit quote-unquote adult consensual pornography have not been very well received. And so the internet continues to be the Wild West in that regard. Another issue that people have sort of struck upon, it's always amazing how, technology begets technology, and technology begets new crimes and things that we have never thought about before. Is this whole idea of our identity online. There has been a cottage industry created essentially in people getting domain names that a regular business might want to use, and then they either use that domain name for something nefarious, or they basically hold it hostage. For example, if I wanted to, create billprince.com, and then I go to try to register that and find out that, somebody else has purchased billprince.com for the sole reason of wanting to extort money from me to get get my name online, that's a problem. May not be illegal, but it's a problem. We've also seen people, get hold of historic sites or famous sites and register those and then use them for strange purposes. So I will just tell you that there is a site called whitehouse.com, which, again, if you are a little kiddo wanting to, do a report on the place where the president lives, I would strongly suggest not going to whitehouse.com. That's a situation where somebody registered that name White House and attached it to an entirely different kind of site. So don't go look at that. But that's a situation where that kind of thing has happened. Of course, one of the biggest issues that the electronic media and the electronic age and the internet has created for people is protecting their intellectual property. If you go back to the Constitution, 1787, and you look at the powers that are set forth in Article 1, Section 8, and the specific powers that the Congress has. One of those is to regulate copyrights, patents, and trademarks. The Founding Fathers knew that, protecting people's intellectual property, number one, not only protected their intellectual property, but would also encourage people to come to this country and innovate with the assurance that, their ideas would belong to them and that they could benefit economically from them. And we have, of course, seen that going back to the days of Napster, if you remember that, where people were, sharing music online. You can, get online and find the latest movies that are still playing in the theaters online. Books, it has become very difficult and very challenging for artists, authors, producers to protect their property, even with digital copyrights and so forth. All right. And you guys can read about all of that, and there's some good discussion in the book about file sharing and copyright protection. One of the big issues, and we're going to talk about this in our discussion question this week, has to deal with social media, and particularly social media in the workplace. We always talk about our right to privacy and things of that nature, and one only needs to go on to Facebook and poke around for a little bit to see that even though people talk about being concerned about their right to privacy, they certainly share a lot of things that one wonders about how seriously they take that right. But with the prevalence of Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and whatever the next new social networking site of the day is going to be, we've had all sorts of legal and ethical issues emerge there. One is just the fact of people utilizing those resources during their working hours. Interestingly, a number of years ago, there was a survey done by America Online, if you remember America Online, that talked about this idea that the average worker, and I found this hard to believe, but maybe not so much, spends an average between 2 to 3 hours of every work day. Now, this is when they're at work, fiddling around with social media sites that have nothing to do with their work. And I suspect that probably the majority of those people who responded to that poll probably did so online while at work. But it can be a huge downward driver of productivity in the workplace, just people doing that instead of their jobs. There's also been issues about people getting onto Facebook and on their own time and disparaging coworkers, disparaging their place of business, disparaging their bosses, doing things that you would probably get fired for if you did it face to face to somebody, but somehow there's this idea that, well, I've done it on social media and it wasn't on work time, and I have all these freedom of speech issues and all that kind of stuff. And so what I will just tell you is at this point in time, these issues are still developing. We're still continuing to see case law develop. We're still we're seeing employers trying to come up with workable social media policies, and again, that's going to be one of your tasks in this week's discussion question, is to work on one of those things. Let's see. Do you guys want to look at this? The Electronic Communication Privacy Act. again, here's what I would say, that generally speaking, we are protected from the government or from our employers snooping around in our affairs. In other words, if we have protected sites and that we use exclusively on our home time, our employers can't access our passwords and go looking at things to see what we're up to. Now, you throw something out there and not protect it or just put it out for everybody to see, then you kind of let the chips fall where they may on that. But generally speaking, an employer who provides iPads, laptops, cell phones to their employees for purposes of business, those employees who are in possession of those employer-provided devices cannot be assured of any reasonable privacy. They're not their devices. They're to be used for work-related issues, and the employer, I believe, has the absolute right to intercept both business-related and personal-related information that's communicated on those particular devices. So be very careful about those things. Another thing that social media has created is sort of this wall between us that tends to cause us to think that we can say anything that we want to anybody because of this sort of relative anonymity that the internet provides to us. And one only needs to get onto Facebook and start poking around a political discussion to see pretty quickly how fast those deteriorate. And we talked about earlier defamation of character, slander, libel, where you say something or write something that's untrue about people. And, we are seeing more and more of those kinds of comments being spread online. And again, the law has really not caught up to dealing with those kinds of issues at this point in time. One thing that's kind of interesting is businesses that have taken after reviewers for what the businesses consider to be, hostile reviews of the services or goods that are provided. We've actually seen some lawsuits involving, companies suing people for what the company believes to be false or malicious reviews of their products. So again, stay tuned as that law develops. With regard to privacy, remember that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights gives us, from the government in particular, the ability to be secure in our persons, places, and papers, and that extends to the computer, even though our founding fathers could not have envisioned computers as bright as they were back in those days. And so, if we have a reasonable expectation of privacy, sitting at home, looking at our phones, reading stuff on our computers, again, without probable cause or a warrant, the government shouldn't, have the ability to come looking at our stuff. Private business is an altogether different thing, and I'm sure a number of you have had this experience of being creeped out. I know I did the first couple of times this happened, where, you go online and, you're looking up, I like turntables and records. I'm kind of a vinyl guy. And so, you go to a website that sells turntables. And so I look at turntables there and, oh, that's pretty cool. Close the site. Then I hop on Facebook and Lord, what is my feed flooded with? Ads about turntable places. Or I'll go get online and look at the New York Times. And what do I see flooded there on the New York Times? Ads about turntable places. So, it's very clear that, once we kind of put it out there, our information, at least insofar as the commercial world is concerned, is all over the place. And, a lot of people have a lot of trouble with that. I guess I have just sort of taken the point of view that, what we do online, whether we think it's private or not, isn't. And so be careful with what you do online. But many of us are concerned about, merchants that we do business with, either, in person at brick and mortar or online, sharing that information. And the book has some good discussions about those issues. All right, well, just a real quick discussion of some of the issues surrounding technology, law, and ethics, and we will visit with you again really soon. Take care.